Oops, we deleted your seat, my sister giggled. Gemma tapped her manicured nail against the gold-framed seating chart displayed at the grand entrance of the ballroom. The sickly sweet perfume of thousands of white roses hung heavy and thick in the warm hotel air, making it hard to breathe. Through the open double mahogany doors, the clinking of heavy silver on fine china and the low, steady hum of wealthy guests drifted out into the hallway. I stood there, frozen in my dark blue dress, and let the sheer humiliation wash over me like a bucket of ice water. The thick, cold satin of the envelope in my right hand grounded me. I was 39 years old. I worked as a senior forensic accountant, auditing corporate ledgers, tracking missing millions for private healthcare systems, and dismantling complex financial frauds for a living. I was a professional at finding the truth hidden in the shadows. Yet, here I was, standing in a lavish hotel corridor looking at a printed board that had systematically erased my existence from my own family. My mother, Sylvia, stepped up beside Gemma. Her expensive silk dress rustled softly as she moved, a sound I had come to associate with incoming lectures. She raised her arm and pointed a sharp finger toward the glowing red exit signs at the far end of the corridor. "You should probably head home, Sloane," Mom said softly. Her tone held that practiced, reasonable edge she always used when she wanted to sound like the victim while holding the knife. "We do not want to make Gemma's special day heavy with any of your unnecessary drama. Just leave quietly. It is for the best." That was the quote. The words that finally snapped the last remaining thread of loyalty in my chest. Your unnecessary drama. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not ask why I was being thrown out of the celebration I had spent the last 12 months funding with my own hard-earned salary. I did not demand to know why the sister I had sheltered and supported was treating me like a stray dog. Instead, I looked directly at the bride. I smiled. It was a genuine, terrifying smile. "Do not worry," I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the hallway noise. "Looks like we both deleted something." Gemma's smug smile faltered. Her eyes dropped down to my hand. The gold foil on the thick envelope caught the light from the crystal chandelier above us, but it was the black ink stamp in the top left corner that held her attention. The thick, circular seal of the Domestic Relations Court. "Where were you last week?" Gemma asked. Her voice lost its giggly, innocent register instantly, dropping into a harsh whisper. "Somewhere you should have gone 16 months ago," I told her. Mom quickly stepped between us, her hands fluttering in the air like defensive shields. She let out a loud, forced laugh for the benefit of two passing bridesmaids in matching blush gowns. "Oh, Sloane is just feeling a little left out," Mom announced to the empty space around us. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging painfully into my bare skin. "Leave right now." Over Mom's shoulder, I could see Declan near an elaborate ice sculpture. The groom. He was a kind, hard-working architect. He was laughing with his groomsmen, holding a tall glass of champagne, looking handsome and relaxed. He had no idea the woman he was about to marry was still legally tied to someone else. Before Mom could push me toward the exit, the hotel wedding planner hurried over. She had a clipboard pressed tightly to her chest and a wireless headset hooked over one ear. She looked panicked. "Gemma, I am so sorry to interrupt," the planner said breathlessly. "I need the final authorization for the premium bar extension and the after-party transportation. The hotel requires the card on file to be swiped one more time for the $50,000 balance before the reception officially begins." "Sloane is handling it," Gemma said smoothly, recovering her mask of perfection. She did not even look at the planner. She kept her eyes locked on my envelope. The planner turned to me, offering a polite, strained smile. She extended a black payment terminal. I took a slow breath. "I have not approved those charges," I said, my voice steady and loud enough for Mom to hear. "And I am not the primary signatory on the venue contract. You will need to collect the remaining $50,000 from the bride and groom." Gemma's head snapped toward me. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her flawless makeup looking like a pale mask. "You would not embarrass me over money in front of everyone." "Not today. This stopped being about money months ago, Gemma," I replied. I turned my back on them and walked away from the ballroom doors. The heavy floral carpet muffled my footsteps as I headed toward the lobby elevators. I did not look back. I did not need to. Gemma did not stay to answer the frantic wedding planner. She chased after me. She caught up to me just as I reached the elevator bank and pressed the down button. The confident bride who had just laughed at my missing seat was nowhere to be found. She gripped her cascading bouquet of orchids so tightly that the thick green stems bent and cracked against her knuckles. "Do not give Declan that envelope," she whispered, glancing frantically over her shoulder to make sure no guests were wandering into the hall. "Why?" I asked, keeping my eyes fixed on the brass doors in front of me. "You told me there was nothing in it I did not already know. You said it was just standard legal paperwork." Gemma swallowed hard. Her breath hitched. Mom was calling her name from down the hall, waving her back for family portraits, her voice carrying a note of rising panic. The elevator arrived with a soft, clear ping. I stepped inside, turned around, and looked at my sister. "You did this to yourself," I said softly. I watched the heavy metal doors slide shut on my sister's terrified face. But to understand how we got to this elevator, and why I was holding a court document that was about to destroy a wedding, you have to rewind exactly 3 years. You have to understand the museum of pain my family built, brick by brick. Have you ever wondered what it takes to turn a loyal sister into a forensic auditor hunting her own flesh and blood? Keep listening. The soft ping of the hotel elevator shifted in my memory, blending into the sharp sound of raindrops hitting my front porch 3 years ago. It was June, and a massive summer storm was washing out the city streets. I was sitting in my modest living room, reviewing quarterly tax reports for work, when a shadow moved past my window. I walked to the door and pulled it open. Gemma stood there under the flickering porch light. Rain soaked the shoulders of her expensive denim jacket. A single oversized pink suitcase rested against her leg. She did not knock. She just waited there, knowing my guilt would force me to open the door. When she stepped inside, shivering and leaving a trail of water on my hardwood floor, she looked devastated. "Alistair took everything," she whispered, staring at her wet designer shoes. "He controls the accounts. He locked me out. I have nothing left, Sloane." I did not demand the ugly details of her failing marriage. I was the older sister. I was the responsible one. My sister needed a safe place. So, I dragged her heavy pink suitcase into the spare room. We sat at my kitchen table drinking lukewarm tea, and I outlined exactly what I could do to help her transition. 6 months of support. I would pay her landlord directly for a small apartment. I would write the checks for a reputable family law attorney to handle her divorce. No cash transfers. She had to find a steady job and get her life back on track. "Thank you," Gemma had sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her sleeve, looking so small and defeated. "Just until I get on my feet." 2 days later, the dynamic shifted. My mother, Sylvia, let herself into my apartment using the spare key I had foolishly provided her years ago for emergencies. Mom set her heavy leather purse on the kitchen counter, folded her arms, and surveyed my living space with her usual mild disdain. 6 months is an arbitrary timeline, Sloane, Mom said. Her voice carried that gentle, disappointed tone she had perfected over decades. It was a tone designed to make you feel like you were failing a moral test. "Your father told you to look out for her before he died. He knew Gemma was fragile. She is not built for hardship like you are." "Dad taught us to help people stand up," I replied, scrubbing a coffee mug in the sink harder than necessary. "He did not teach us to carry them forever." Mom sighed loudly, shaking her head. "You have always been so cold. You only care about your numbers and your spreadsheets." Gemma sat at the table, perfectly silent, letting the guilt trip hang in the heavy air. She knew Mom would fight her battles. I dried my hands on a towel. The familiar pressure settled tight in my chest. It was the same pressure I had felt my entire life. I was the invisible child, expected to provide stability, while Gemma was the golden child, allowed to stumble and be rescued. But I did not break my own rule. I signed a check for the lawyer's retainer fee and handed it to my sister, making it payable only to the law firm. That same evening, sitting alone in the dark, I opened a blank spreadsheet on my laptop. I titled it Family Support. I did not track the money out of malice or pettiness. I tracked it because my family had a relentless habit of rewriting history whenever Gemma needed a rescue. They would minimize my contributions and maximize her victimhood. Every single month, I logged the date, the check number, and the exact purpose. I recorded the rent payments, the utility bills, and the legal invoices. The money flowed out of my hard-earned savings account, but it went straight to the vendors. While Gemma spent her days lying on my sofa, scrolling through social media and complaining about the unfairness of the job market, I spent my nights at that small wooden desk. I worked my demanding corporate job during the day, hunting down missing hospital funds. After dinner, I studied for advanced forensic accounting certifications until my eyes burned. I declined weekend trips with my colleagues. I skipped dinners to finish practice exams. "You really do not know how to enjoy life," Mom told me over the phone one evening when I declined a family gathering to study. "You work too much. It makes you unapproachable. No wonder you are still single." She did not know the certifications came with a massive salary increase. I kept my new income hidden. My college friend Beatrix, who worked as a tough civil attorney downtown, gave me one piece of crucial advice over coffee during that time. "Build an emergency fund at a different bank, Sloan," Beatrix had warned me, tapping her coffee cup. "And never, ever mention the balance to your mother or your sister. They view your wallet as community property." By the end of that year, the late nights finally paid off. I purchased a beautiful 2-bedroom condo near the city center using my own savings. Mom visited the new place exactly once. She walked through the bright living room, criticized the lack of yard space, and then held out her hand. "I will need a spare key for family emergencies," she demanded. "The building manager has an emergency protocol," I told her, leaning against the front door, feeling a new sense of ownership. "He keeps the master key." Gemma laughed from the kitchen island. "Are you afraid someone is going to steal your little box of an apartment?" "No," I said quietly. I opened the door and waited for them to leave. When they stepped out into the hallway, complaining about my attitude, I pulled the heavy wooden door shut. The deadbolt engaged with a loud, satisfying click. For the first time in my life, I stood in a home that did not contain my sister's unpaid bills or my mother's quiet judgments. Or so I thought. The financial boundary worked for a while. It worked until Gemma met Declan and started planning a wedding that belonged in a magazine. And that is when the Museum of Pain truly opened its doors. Have you ever had a family member treat your bank account like their personal emergency fund? Tell me below, because what happened next almost broke me. The fragile peace I had built around my life shattered exactly 6 months before Gemma's wedding day. We were sitting at a high-end steakhouse downtown. Declan, the groom-to-be, was across from me, passing a heavy ceramic bowl of roasted asparagus. He was a genuinely good guy. He had smiled so warmly, full of sincere gratitude. "I really want to thank you, Sloan," Declan had said, raising his water glass. "Gemma told me how much you helped her through the dark times with her ex-husband. I know lawyers are incredibly expensive, and you stepping up like that means everything to us. We literally could not afford this wedding if you were not helping with the venue." Under the table, a sharp kick hit my shin. "Mom." The silent, deeply familiar signal demanding my compliance. I looked at Gemma. She was busy inspecting her diamond engagement ring, feigning modesty. But then, a waiter accidentally placed the wrong vintage of red wine next to her plate. It was a minor mistake. The waiter immediately apologized. But Gemma sighed loudly, a dramatic, theatrical sound. "Are you incapable of reading a simple label?" She snapped at the young man, her voice dripping with venom. "We are paying a fortune to eat here. Fix it now." Declan looked uncomfortable. Mom patted Gemma's hand, whispering something about how stressful wedding planning was. I just watched. I watched the golden child, the supposed fragile victim of a terrible first marriage, belittle a working-class kid over a bottle of wine. It was a stark reminder of who she really was when she felt powerful. That night, after I returned to my secure, quiet condo, I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed violently on the bathroom counter. It was a text message from my bank. An automated fraud alert. Urgent. Did you attempt a charge of $8,000 at Global Airlines? Reply yes or no. My heart pounded against my ribs. I spit out my toothpaste, grabbed the phone, and typed no. Within seconds, my phone rang. It was the fraud department. The representative explained that someone had just tried to book 2 first-class flight upgrades to the Maldives using my emergency credit card. The card was saved on a family travel portal I had used years ago to book a domestic flight for Mom. I sat down on the edge of my bathtub, the cold porcelain seeping through my pajamas. Only 2 people in the world had access to that portal account: Mom and Gemma. And only one of them was planning a honeymoon to the Maldives. Gemma had tried to quietly steal $8,000 from me to fly first class, assuming I would not notice or that Mom would guilt me into paying for it once the charge went through. I told the bank to lock the card permanently and issue a new one. I did not call my sister to scream at her. I did not call my mother to complain. Years of forensic accounting had taught me one fundamental rule: when you catch a rat stealing cheese, you do not yell at the rat. You find the nest. You follow the money. If Gemma was willing to steal $8,000 for a plane ticket while I was already funding her wedding venue, what else was she hiding? I walked out of the bathroom, went straight to my home office, and booted up my laptop. I wasn't just a sister anymore. I was an auditor. And I was about to follow the money. I opened the family support spreadsheet. I scrolled down to the legal fees column. $18,000. Paid directly to a prestigious family law firm over the course of 3 years to handle a supposedly complex, messy divorce from Alistair. I stared at the numbers. The timeline simply did not make sense. Declan had mentioned the divorce was finalized ages ago. But I clearly remembered paying a substantial legal invoice for Gemma just 11 months prior. Why was a law firm still billing me if the case was closed? I needed to see her side of the ledger. I needed the wedding budget. The next morning, I sent Gemma a casual email. I told her that in order to finalize my $50,000 contribution for the White Rose venue, I needed to review the master wedding budget spreadsheet to ensure we were on track. I framed it as a standard accounting habit. She complained, of course. She called Mom, who then called me to say I was being controlling. But I held firm. No spreadsheet, no venue money. Reluctantly, Gemma emailed me the file. It was a messy, unfiltered list of bank transactions exported directly from her checking account. She was too arrogant and too careless to scrub the data. I sat in my locked condo, the city traffic humming 20 floors below, and opened the file. I scrolled past floral deposits, catering estimates, and dress fittings. Then, my eyes caught a peculiar line item. A deposit had hit Gemma's account in March. The description clearly listed the exact family law firm we had hired for her divorce. They had issued a refund for unbilled hours. $15,000. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. My breathing slowed. I checked the very next line on the spreadsheet. Exactly 2 days after the law firm returned the money to her account, a massive debit appeared. It was a wire transfer. $15,000. The recipient? The White Rose venue. Gemma had looked me in the eye, cried real tears, and sworn every cent of my retainer went toward finalizing her complicated divorce. She claimed the lawyers were draining her dry. But the truth was right there in black and white. The money that should have ended her first marriage had been secretly refunded to her, and she had used my money to pay the initial deposit for the room where she planned to start her second marriage. She had stolen from me to fund her luxury wedding. And she was still demanding I pay the remaining $50,000 balance. I highlighted the 2 rows on the screen in bright yellow. I saved a copy of the file directly to my secure local drive. A cold, hard knot of anger formed in my stomach, but my mind was crystal clear. If she lied about the money, what else did she lie about? Was she even divorced at all? I picked up my phone and drafted a message to my sister. The trap was set. The glow of my laptop screen was the only light in my living room. I stared at the highlighted rows on Gemma's bank statement. $15,000 refunded from the divorce lawyer. $15,000 paid to the wedding venue. I picked up my phone and dialed Gemma's number. It was time to push the first domino. She answered on the second ring, chewing loudly on something. Hey, did you look at the budget? The venue needs the final $50,000 by Friday, or they release the ballroom to another couple. I looked at it, I said, keeping my tone perfectly flat, stripped of any emotion. The final payment requires a simple condition before I authorize the transfer. Gemma gasped. It was a sharp intake of air that usually preceded a massive tantrum. A condition? Are you kidding me, Sloan? You promised to cover the venue. You cannot pull this controlling nonsense now. Mom said you would do this. Because you used your divorce to ask for my financial help for years, I reminded her, ignoring her rising volume. I just need a copy of the certified final divorce decree for my records. Once I have proof the first marriage is legally resolved, I will authorize the wedding payment. You have no right to dig through my private life, she screamed, her voice cracking. That is my trauma. You are just holding money over my head because you are jealous. Send the decree, Gemma. Or there is no money. I ended the call. I knew exactly what would happen next. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mom. Sloan, what on earth is wrong with you? Sylvia demanded, her voice trembling with manufactured outrage. Gemma is crying uncontrollably. She is hyperventilating. Why are you punishing your sister for finally finding happiness? You promised to pay for that venue. Did you actually see the certified judgment, Mom? I asked calmly. She ignored the question, pivoting instantly to her favorite weapon. Your father would be heartbroken to see you treating family like an auditor treats a criminal suspect. You need to think about our reputation and stop this foolishness. Transfer the money today. I need the document, Mom. That is my final word. I hung up on her, too. I walked into my kitchen, poured a glass of cold water, and waited. I knew Gemma was desperate. The venue deadline was real, and she did not have $50,000 sitting in her bank account. Her fake lifestyle was entirely dependent on my real paycheck. 2 hours later, an email arrived in my inbox. The attached file bore the name Final Decree Certified. The glare of the computer monitor illuminated my dark living room as I opened the document. My daily corporate job involved hunting for missing healthcare funds, which meant I spent 40 hours a week looking for numbers, dates, and signatures that did not belong. I was trained to spot anomalies that normal people scrolled right past. I opened the PDF and zoomed in. The file number at the top matched the public court records perfectly. The layout looked standard. But as I scrolled down to the clerk's stamp at the bottom of page 2, something felt deeply wrong. The black ink of the official court stamp looked terribly blurry compared to the crisp, sharp black text of the surrounding paragraphs. The margins shifted slightly on page 3, leaving an awkward, unnatural gap near the bottom signature line. More importantly, the date of the judgment was listed as 3 weeks after the dismissal date I had seen on the public online docket earlier that year. A sudden memory pulled my attention away from the dates. I navigated to an archived folder on my hard drive and opened a different file. It was a temporary financial support order my sister had forwarded me 3 years ago when she needed me to pay her rent. I dragged the 2 windows side by side on my large monitor. I zoomed in on the court clerk's stamp on both documents to 400%. The truth became painfully, undeniably obvious. The stamp on the temporary order from 3 years ago possessed the exact same pixelated blur on the left edge as the new, supposedly recent final decree. Furthermore, a tiny, microscopic black speck, likely a scratch on the courthouse scanner glass from 3 years ago, appeared in the exact same position on both documents. She had not just lied about the money. She had committed a felony. Gemma had taken an old temporary financial order, used a PDF editor to alter the text to read as a final judgment of divorce, copied the old court stamp, and presented it to me as proof of a dissolved marriage. She had forged a government document to extort $50,000 from me. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair. The silence in my apartment pressed heavily against my ears. The sheer audacity of the crime was breathtaking. She was about to marry Declan in a ballroom full of wealthy guests, and she was legally still married to Alistair. I did not alter the file. I did not call the police. Not yet. I saved the original email with the forged attachment to a secure, encrypted folder. I wrote down the exact discrepancies on a yellow legal pad. Then I needed to lock her into the lie. I needed her to admit, in writing, what this document was. I opened a new message window and typed a very specific, carefully worded reply to Gemma. Thank you for sending this. Just to be absolutely clear for my financial records before I authorize the $50,000 transfer, Please confirm in writing that your first marriage legally ended and that the attached document is the genuine, certified final judgment from the court. I hit send and watched the screen. My heart beat a slow, steady rhythm. When the reply came through 12 minutes later, it contained exactly what I needed to bury her. Yes, I am legally divorced. That is the real document. Release the payment and stop creating problems, Sloan. I printed the entire email thread immediately. Gemma had just locked her lie in digital ink. She was completely unaware that she had handed me the exact legal leverage I required. Now it was time to build her coffin. The next afternoon, the hissing of an industrial espresso machine filled the noisy, crowded coffee shop right across the street from the county courthouse. I sat in a booth in the back, far away from the windows. I slid the printed email thread and the suspicious, pixelated PDF across a small wooden table. Beatrix, my college friend and a ruthless civil attorney, adjusted her designer glasses. She read through the pages with the practiced silence of someone who dealt with human garbage for a living. She didn't gasp. She didn't act shocked. She just analyzed. "Listen to me carefully, Sloan," Beatrix said, tapping a heavy silver pen against the forged paper. "Do not post anything online. Do not threaten her. And do not call her employer yet. You are going to walk across the street, get the official certified record from the clerk, and let the paper trail do the talking." Beatrix took a slow sip of her black coffee, her dark eyes scanning the blurry court stamp one more time. "You will not get all your money back. A judge will consider some of those early rent payments a gift. But you can stop the bleeding right now. And you can protect Declan from marrying into a massive fraud." Leaving my half-empty cup on the table, I walked out into the crisp autumn air. The courthouse lobby hummed with the quiet urgency of lawyers, panicked citizens, and armed security guards. The clerk's office smelled faintly of old paper, floor wax, and misery. I stepped up to the thick bulletproof glass counter, paid a small processing fee with my debit card, and requested the certified case summary for Gemma's divorce. The man behind the partition typed lazily on his keyboard. He hit print, stamped a heavy red seal onto a crisp sheet of paper, and slid it through the metal slot at the bottom of the glass. He offered no legal advice, just a tired nod as he called the next ticket number. Carrying the document, I walked back across the street and sat down across from Beatrix. I placed the certified docket next to the PDF my sister had emailed me. The dates were undeniably contradictory. The official court record confirmed a dismissal 16 months ago. The judge had thrown the entire case out for failure to prosecute. There was absolutely no final judgment on file. The case was dead. Beatrix studied the two conflicting documents for a long moment. She looked up, her expression completely serious, stripped of our usual friendly banter. "If this was altered," Beatrix said softly, pointing at the PDF, "your sister did not just lie about a divorce to save face. She used the lie to induce a massive financial payment from you. That is wire fraud. And if she uses this fake decree to sign a new marriage license, that is another crime." I nodded. My fingers moved rapidly across my phone screen as I logged into my banking app. I deleted my saved billing profiles from every single wedding vendor portal. Turning off the automatic payments for my sister's emergency credit cards took only 3 clicks. I immediately changed the passwords on all my personal banking accounts. Then I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went in my family. Was Mom just a foolish enabler, or was she an active participant in the cover-up? I walked out of the coffee shop, found a quiet bench in the park, and dialed the house where I grew up. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice coated in that familiar layer of forced, sugary cheerfulness. "Sloan, darling, did you finally send the money to the venue? Gemma is just sick with worry." I did not yell. I did not reveal the mountain of printed evidence sitting in my tote bag. I simply told the woman who raised me the facts. "I pulled the certified court docket today, Mom," I said smoothly. "It contains no final judgment for the divorce. It was dismissed 16 months ago. Gemma is still married." The line went dead quiet. 10 full seconds of heavy, suffocating silence. A city bus drove past my bench, the air brakes hissing loudly, before Mom finally spoke. "Paperwork can be fixed after the honeymoon, Sloan." My lungs felt empty. All the air rushed out of me. I gripped the plastic edge of the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. She knew. Does Declan know? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mom let out an exasperated sigh, the kind she usually reserved for stubborn children dropping food on her clean carpet. Declan does not need every ugly detail from your sister's past. Men get spooked easily. You are making a massive issue out of a simple filing delay. Pay the venue and stop trying to ruin her life just because yours is empty. I ended the call right then. I didn't even say goodbye. My thumb hovered over the screen as I opened our text message thread. I needed her admission locked in text, just like Gemma's email. I typed a single, direct sentence. You know she is still legally married. 3 agonizing minutes passed before the gray chat bubble appeared, followed by a new message from Mom. I know this family needs you to stop making it worse. Just pay the bill, Sloan. We will handle the paperwork later. My phone vibrated again almost immediately, but the new notification came from Gemma. She did not offer an apology. She did not attempt to explain the missing court docket. She simply demanded the money. Mom says you will calm down and pay like always. The hotel coordinator is threatening to cancel the premium bar package. Send the confirmation number tonight. I read the words 3 times. The sheer audacity, the blatant entitlement of the demand cleared away the last remaining traces of my lingering guilt. They did not view me as a human being. I was an appliance. An ATM machine that dispensed cash when kicked hard enough. I typed a quick response to Gemma. Why exactly do you believe I would authorize a $50,000 payment for a fraudulent wedding? Her reply came instantly. Because you always do when it matters. You won't let Mom down. That single sentence illuminated my entire 39 years of existence. My sister did not value my love. My mother did not respect my hard work or my independence. They simply loved the fact that I functioned as an endless financial shock absorber for their terrible decisions. My money and my silent obedience were the required currency to maintain my designated seat at their table. I stood up from the park bench. The cold wind bit at my face, but I felt warmer, lighter than I had in years. I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, Beatrix drafted a strictly neutral, formal letter to Alistair, Gemma's ex-husband. The attorney asked solely for a copy of the final decree or any related court documents, carefully mentioning nothing about the upcoming wedding, the forged PDF, or any potential fraud. We needed his side of the story documented before the explosion. Sitting across from Beatrix's polished mahogany desk, I finally voiced my biggest fear. I admitted that Alistair might actually be the abusive, controlling monster my sister had described for 3 years. I worried he was intentionally dragging out the legal process to hold his estranged wife hostage out of spite. We are going to rely strictly on the paperwork, Beatrix advised, sealing the letter inside a crisp white envelope. We do not trust anyone's emotional performance. Not Gemma's and not his. I genuinely hoped Alistair would turn out to be the villain. It would make my sister's lies slightly more digestible. That fragile hope shattered into pieces exactly 3 days later when Alistair agreed to meet us. Beatrix's high-end conference room smelled of expensive leather and lemon polish, providing a sharp, almost comical contrast to the worn canvas jacket draped over the chair across from us. Alistair did not look like a controlling monster. The industrial electrician simply looked completely exhausted. He had dark circles under his eyes and rough, calloused hands. He carried a heavy manila folder that he placed gently onto the center of the large wooden table. He did not ask for my sympathy, nor did he offer any apologies for the past. Alistair just wanted his name legally detached from a woman who had ruined his credit score. Beatrix opened the folder and extracted a thick stack of papers. Alistair had brought the proposed settlement agreement, the early financial discovery emails, and a genuine, original copy of the temporary support order from their initial court hearings. The moment Beatrix placed the genuine temporary order next to the printed PDF my sister had emailed me, the entire room went perfectly silent. The case file number sat in the exact same position on both pages. The court clerk stamp carried the identical pixelated blur on the left edge. The tiny black speck from the scanner glass was there. She forged it, Alistair said quietly, staring at the fake document. He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Of course she did. She thinks the rules do not apply to her. Alistair leaned forward and explained exactly why the divorce case had died. He had actually signed the proposed settlement willingly, eager to move on with his life and escape the nightmare. Gemma, however, had completely refused to submit her mandatory financial disclosure to the judge. The delay was not born of laziness, fear, or confusion. My sister carried over $86,000 in secret credit card debt, accumulated across multiple hidden retail accounts to fund her designer lifestyle. She knew a proper asset division in court would drag those ugly numbers directly into the public record. More importantly, she knew her new fiancé, Declan, would run a background check before they applied for a joint mortgage on a house. Gemma planned to use Declan's pristine credit score to secure a luxury suburban home, then quietly fix her previous marriage paperwork and hide the debt after the honeymoon, trapping him legally. She told the lawyers to drop the case, Alistair explained, handing Beatrix an email printout. She got a $15,000 refund from the retainer, and she walked away. She left me tied to her mess. I stared at the email. It was a message from Alistair to Gemma, dated 16 months ago. We are still legally married until a judge enters a final judgment. You have to submit your financials, Gemma. Gemma's reply sat right beneath his warning. I know. I will handle it. 16 months ago. She had known for 16 months. And every single dollar she asked me for after that date came with a calculated lie attached. I thanked Alistair for his time. As he packed up his canvas jacket and walked out of the law office, I felt a strange sense of solidarity with the man. We were both victims of the same predator. I typed up a chronological timeline of events, printed 2 copies, and locked the master set inside a fireproof safe hidden in my bedroom closet. Column 1 contained the undeniable evidence. Column 2 listed the people who absolutely needed the truth. Declan occupied the very top slot because the groom deserved to know he was about to sign a fraudulent marriage license and take on $86,000 of hidden debt. The regional bank where Gemma worked as a branch manager did not belong on the list yet because I refused to use my sister's career as a weapon. I was seeking justice, not total annihilation. Finally, Mom would receive 0 updates, stripping her of any ability to warn the bride or intercept the documents. I folded the yellow paper carefully, placed it inside my fireproof safe alongside the court records, and spun the heavy metal dial. The lock clicked into place with a definitive, satisfying thud. The battle lines were drawn. The evidence was secured. The golden child was about to face the one thing she had avoided her entire life: consequences. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far into the story, you know the real drama is just about to start. Drop a comment saying W down below so I know you're part of the True Squad. I will be hearting and replying to every single comment that says W. Stay tuned for the explosive finale. Friday morning arrived with a bitter, biting chill in the autumn air. It was exactly 24 hours before Gemma was scheduled to walk down the aisle. I woke up before dawn. I did not bother making coffee. I went straight to my home office, turned on my laptop, and began the systematic dismantling of the financial safety net I had unwittingly provided for my sister. As a forensic accountant, I was used to untangling webs of deceit for massive corporations. Unraveling my own family's financial mess required the exact same clinical precision. I logged into my secure credit card portals. The screen cast a pale, bluish glow across my face in the dark room. Click by click, I severed the lifelines. I navigated to the hotel's vendor portal. I canceled the authorization for the premium bar extension. I revoked the payment profile for the luxury after-party transportation. I removed my credit card from the honeymoon suite reservation. Crucially, I did not issue any fraudulent chargebacks for the services they had already consumed or the deposits they had already paid. I was an auditor, not a thief. I simply stopped the bleeding on the uncommitted funds. The massive $50,000 balloon payment for the ballroom was no longer guaranteed by my name. An email from the hotel wedding coordinator arrived shortly after my lunch break. The planner confirmed the cancellation of my payment guarantees, noting professionally that the bride and groom would now bear the full responsibility for the remaining balance upon arrival. I printed her confirmation email and slid it into my leatherwork briefcase. My legal obligations to that toxic fairy tale were officially severed. That same afternoon, my office phone rang. It was the regional director of my firm. He called to officially offer me the position of Director of Compliance, a role I had spent the last 2 years grinding for in the shadows. The promotion came with a massive salary increase and a substantial quarterly bonus. I thanked him, feeling a profound sense of pride swell in my chest. My success was built entirely on my own sweat, late nights, and relentless dedication. It was a sharp, poetic contrast to the fragile house of cards Gemma was currently trying to build using my money, a stolen credit score, and a forged government document. I did not call my mother to celebrate the promotion. I did not text my sister. I knew they would only view my new salary as a larger pool of funds to fix their ongoing crises. That era was permanently over. The promised retaliation arrived on Friday evening. My cell phone rang while I was packing my dark blue dress into a garment bag in my bedroom. Mom's name flashed across the display. I answered on the third ring, bracing myself for the inevitable storm. "Gemma told me you canceled the credit card authorizations," Mom said. Her voice carried a low, dangerous frequency that usually made my throat go dry. "She is having a panic attack, Sloan. The hotel is demanding the $50,000 tomorrow before they open the ballroom doors." "Then she better find a way to pay for her own party, Mom," I replied smoothly, zipping up the garment bag. "If you bring any of your ridiculous court drama to that hotel tomorrow, we will not have a seat for you at the reception," the woman who raised me whispered fiercely. "Listen to me very carefully. If you ruin this day, you will not have a family to come back to. You will be entirely alone." My heart rate did not spike. My hands remained perfectly steady. I looked around my quiet, secure condo. I looked at the life I had built with my own 2 hands. The threat to erase me from the seating chart was not an empty one, but it no longer carried the power to destroy me. "Then you have misunderstood what I built when I left your house," I told her quietly. I ended the call. I walked into my closet, opened the heavy fireproof safe, and retrieved the thick cream envelope containing the certified court records and the forged PDF. The gold foil seal caught the overhead light. I slipped the heavy packet into the inner pocket of my winter coat, feeling its weight pressed gently against my ribs. It was time for a wedding. But who was actually going to survive it? Saturday morning dawned gray and heavy, the sky threatening a massive downpour. I arrived at the historic hotel 2 hours before the ceremony was scheduled to begin in the courtyard. The bridal suite on the 7th floor smelled intensely of burning curling irons, sweet champagne, and pure, concentrated anxiety. I knocked once on the heavy wooden door, pushed it open, and stepped into the absolute chaos. Bridesmaids in matching blush gowns scattered across the plush carpet like startled birds. Gemma sat in a high chair facing a massive lighted mirror, wearing a pristine white silk robe. Mom hovered right behind her, aggressively adjusting a sparkling veil. The moment they saw me in the mirror, the room fell into a dead, suffocating silence. The makeup artist paused, her brush hovering in the air. I walked straight to the makeup counter. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the thick cream envelope with the red court seal, and set it down right next to a tube of expensive lipstick. "You have 1 hour before the ceremony starts," I said quietly, keeping my voice low enough that the makeup artist in the corner could not decipher the exact words. "Tell Declan the truth about the paperwork before you sign the legal marriage license, and I will walk away. I will not say a word." Gemma glanced at the court seal on the envelope. Her painted, flawless smile vanished. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking utterly terrified for a split second. But then, the mask slipped back on. The fragile victim act she had played for 3 years disappeared in a heartbeat, replaced by a cold, calculating stare that made her look exactly like Mom. "The case technically ended," Sloan, Gemma hissed, gripping the padded arms of her makeup chair. "The final entry is just a bureaucratic formality. The docket says dismissed. I am practically divorced." And Alistair explicitly warned you that you were still married 16 months ago. I corrected her, leaning slightly forward. You chose to ignore him. You forged a court document. That is a felony, Gemma. Mom immediately stepped between us, her face flushed with fury. We will sort out the old paperwork after the honeymoon, she whispered fiercely, grabbing my shoulder. Do not do this today. Just pay the venue balance so they open the doors. I shook off her hand. I looked at the sister I had spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to save. Gemma narrowed her eyes. If you try to ruin this for me, I will tell everyone here that you are just a pathetic, jealous spinster. I will make sure the entire extended family knows you tried to destroy my wedding because you could never find a man of your own. You are just bitter because nobody wants you. She expected me to cry. She expected me to crumble under the weight of the insult, surrender the documents, and pull out my checkbook to buy back her affection. But as I looked at her, I felt nothing. No anger, no grief, no lingering guilt. The emotional well had finally run dry. I was looking at a stranger who happened to share my DNA. The deadline remains the same, I said, my voice perfectly steady. Before he signs the license. Gemma snapped her fingers, calling her bridesmaids back into the room. Sloane is leaving, she announced loudly, fanning her face. She is just too stressed. She expected me to leave the documents behind in my defeat. Instead, I picked up the cream envelope, slid it safely back into my coat pocket, and turned toward the door. I walked out of the bridal suite without looking back. Gemma thought she had won by kicking me out of the room. She thought she had protected her lie. She didn't realize I already had a backup courier ready to deliver the final blow. Would you have handed the papers over right then, or wait for the perfect moment? Let me tell you how the trap finally snapped shut. The ceremony took place in the hotel courtyard under a massive, expensive canopy of white orchids. I did not sit in the second row, where the immediate family usually gathered. Mom had already altered the ushers list, placing me far in the back among distant cousins and awkward plus-ones. I sat there quietly, watching them exchange vows. I did not stand up to object when the minister asked for those who opposed the union to speak. I refused to turn a strict legal boundary into a cheap theatrical spectacle. The real damage was going to happen in the private signing room. When the guests moved toward the ballroom corridor for cocktail hour, I slipped down a side hallway. I found Gideon, the best man. He was standing near the coat check holding a tray of drinks, looking entirely relaxed. Gideon, I said, offering a polite, warm smile. Declan left this in the bridal suite earlier. Could you give it to him right before they sign the state marriage license in the private room? It is incredibly important paperwork. The groomsman took the thick cream envelope, nodding happily, thoroughly unaware of the explosive material hidden inside. Sure thing, Sloane. I am heading to the signing room right now. As he walked away, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text message directly to the groom. Declan, please read the envelope Gideon brings you before signing any legal document. I am so sorry. A few minutes later, I approached the main ballroom entrance. The heavy scent of white roses flooded the corridor. The gold-framed seating chart stood exactly where I knew it would be. I scanned the alphabetical list, noting that my name had been purposefully erased from the display. Gemma stepped up beside me, holding a tall glass of champagne, flanked by Mom and a few giggling bridesmaids. Oops, we deleted your seat, my sister giggled, tapping her manicured nail against the glass board. Mom pointed a sharp finger toward the exit signs. You should probably head home, Sloane. I turned to face the bride. Do not worry, I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the hallway noise. Looks like we both deleted something. The hotel wedding planner intercepted me near the grand staircase before I could reach the front doors. She was frantic. She demanded the $50,000. Gemma caught up to us, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble floor. She promised verbally, my sister demanded, pointing a shaking finger at me. Charge her card on file right now. I looked directly at the bride, fully aware that a dozen wealthy wedding guests were standing near the coat check, listening to every single word. My gift depended on a legal divorce, I stated, my voice echoing slightly in the cavernous lobby, loud and undeniable. You confirmed one that does not exist. You are still married to Alistair." A heavy, suffocating silence dropped over the gathered crowd. Guests exchanged confused, horrified glances. A few people literally gasped. Gemma stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing without producing a single sound. Her champagne glass tilted, spilling expensive liquid onto the floor. While my sister stood paralyzed in the lobby, the heavy mahogany doors of the private signing room suddenly swung open down the hall. I watched Declan step out into the corridor. The live jazz band inside the ballroom was playing a cheerful standard, but the groom looked violently ill. His face was entirely drained of color. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. In his left hand, he clutched the cream envelope I had given Gideon. In his right hand, he held the official state marriage license application. I knew exactly what must have happened behind those closed doors. He had read the certified docket. He had seen the fake PDF with the blurry stamp. And then he had looked down at the government form Gemma had filled out weeks ago. She had been forced to write a specific date of divorce on that application to get the license approved by the state. The bomb had just detonated. What happens when a groom realizes his bride belongs in handcuffs? Keep listening, because the explosion was spectacular. Declan ignored the whispering guests gathered in the corridor. He bypassed the frantic wedding planner entirely. Marching straight up to the bride, he held up the government application and the court records, his hands shaking with barely contained fury. He looked at the woman he loved, the woman wearing a pristine white gown, and asked a single, devastating question. "Gemma, who is Alistair?" The heavy silence in the grand lobby broke when Declan turned abruptly and walked back toward the private signing room to get away from the crowd. He did not yell. He did not cause a scene. His quiet fury was far more terrifying. Gemma stumbled after her fiancé, her white gown dragging across the polished marble floor, her expensive heels slipping. Mom hurried closely behind, her face red with panic. Gideon, the best man, gestured for the minister and me to enter the small mahogany-paneled office before pulling the heavy wooden doors firmly shut, blocking out the stares of the wedding guests. Inside the enclosed space, the air felt stifling and terribly still. Declan dropped the cream envelope onto a small glass table. He picked up the state marriage application and looked directly at my sister. "I need you to tell me the exact date your first marriage ended," the groom said, his voice stripped of all its usual warmth. It was cold, hard, and unforgiving. Gemma swallowed hard, gripping the edge of a leather chair to keep from collapsing. She provided a date in late May, her eyes darting nervously toward Mom for help. "That is fascinating," Declan replied, holding up the government application. "Because you wrote a different date in August on this sworn legal document. And the certified court docket in this envelope lists a dismissal from April of last year. That makes 3 different dates, Gemma. So which one is the lie, and which one is the felony?" Mom immediately stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on the bride's trembling shoulder. The woman who raised me offered a practiced, reassuring smile, trying to deploy her usual manipulation. "The court systems are just terribly slow these days," Declan, Mom said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Sloane is blowing a simple clerical delay vastly out of proportion because she feels left out of the family. You know how she gets." I did not raise my voice to argue. I stood near the closed doors and stated one simple fact. The certified public docket contains no final judgment. She forged the PDF to steal the venue money from me. Declan pulled his phone from his tuxedo pocket. He did not ask for further explanations. He snapped clear, high-resolution photographs of the fraudulent decree, the actual docket, and the marriage application. He announced, his voice devoid of emotion, that he was sending the images directly to his family attorney for immediate review. The minister cleared his throat, stepping away from the glass table. The older man picked up his gold pen and capped it with a sharp click. He stated clearly that he could not legally finalize any marriage license while the bride's capacity to wed remained in question. It was illegal. Gathering his leather portfolio, the minister stepped back against the wall, wanting no part of this disaster. Panic finally shattered Gemma's frozen demeanor. "You cannot just walk away," My sister cried out, reaching desperately for Declan's sleeve, tears streaming down her ruined makeup. We already stood out there in the courtyard. We already said our vows in front of everyone. I love you. The groom stepped backward easily, avoiding her grasp as if she were carrying a plague. You let me stand in front of my entire family and make a legal vow based on forged documents, he said quietly. You lied to me for a year. This paperwork is stopping right now. There is no marriage. Leaving the bride sobbing uncontrollably into her hands, Declan opened the heavy doors and walked out to find his parents and shut down the reception. The lavish party began unraveling immediately. Through the open doorway, I could see the massive 5-tier wedding cake sitting untouched on its silver pedestal. The live jazz band stopped playing mid-song, packing their brass instruments back into velvet-lined cases while confused, murmuring guests slowly began moving toward the valet stand. The hotel planner slipped into the private room a moment later. She clutched her clipboard, looking incredibly uncomfortable. She informed the room that Declan had officially revoked his payment authorization for the entire event, and she noted that I had already withdrawn my financial backing yesterday. The master contract still held the couple fully responsible for the remaining balance. Declan's attorney would handle his portion regarding the fraud, leaving the bride facing a mountain of immediate, crushing debt. Mom turned toward me, her eyes pleading, her arrogance finally broken. Just cover it tonight, Sloane. We can sort out the details tomorrow. Please do not let them humiliate your sister like this. I looked at the woman who had spent decades conditioning me to absorb every family disaster. That is exactly how we got here. By paying the ransom every single time. Turning my back on them, I walked out of the suffocating room and headed down the long empty hallway toward the exit. The thick carpets muffled my footsteps, but the frantic clicking of high heels soon echoed behind me. Gemma chased me down the corridor, catching my forearm just before I reached the main lobby. My sister was crying genuinely now, her perfect makeup ruined, her veil torn. She grabbed my hand, begging me to come back to the ballroom. She pleaded with me to pay the planner before the hotel management involved the police for theft of services. I gently detached her fingers from my skin, feeling nothing but a profound sense of exhaustion and finality. Which lie do you want me to pay for, Gemma? I asked, my voice echoing slightly against the high ceiling. The wedding venue, or the husband you never divorced? Just this once, the bride whispered, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. There has never been a just once with you. I kept walking, pushing through the heavy glass doors into the cool evening air. The explosion at the hotel was spectacular, but it was only a firecracker compared to the federal bomb waiting for Gemma on Monday morning. 2 weeks passed before the dust truly began to settle. Alistair hired a new, aggressive attorney and filed a legitimate divorce petition, legally demanding a full disclosure of all hidden marital debts. Declan moved with surgical precision. The former groom permanently dissolved the joint wedding accounts, terminated the suburban house purchase, and demanded his diamond ring back. Gemma was forced to drag her oversized pink suitcase right back into my mother's guest bedroom, exactly where she had started 3 years ago. Sitting in my quiet condo, I watched the days turn into weeks. I paid 0 bills for them. By the middle of November, the legal terminology shifted from family drama to federal consequences. Valerie, the strict head of credit compliance at the regional bank where Gemma worked, was a professional acquaintance of mine. While I didn't call her directly to report my sister, the failed house purchase did the job for me. When Declan canceled the mortgage application and flagged the paperwork for misrepresentation, the bank initiated a strict internal audit. They quickly discovered that Gemma had foolishly submitted that exact same forged divorce decree to her employer while applying for an employee discount rate on her new mortgage. My sister was immediately placed on unpaid administrative leave. A week later, Human Resources officially terminated her employment for falsifying government documents on a federal loan application. Gemma called my cell phone that evening, her voice hysterical. "You destroyed my career," she screamed through the speaker. "The compliance office fired me because of your stupid documents." "I did not put a forged PDF into your employment file, Gemma," I replied calmly. "You did that yourself." I ended the call and permanently blocked her number. Without a steady corporate income or Declan's pristine credit score, she faced a brutal new financial reality. The historic hotel and multiple credit card companies sent aggressive demand notices. She was forced to sell her luxury SUV just to cover the minimum monthly payments on her secret $86,000 debt. Desperation bred a deeply flawed strategy. Exactly 4 months after the ruined wedding, Gemma sent a formal demand letter through a cheap civil attorney. She officially claimed I owed her $50,000 for a broken verbal contract regarding the venue gift. Beatrix simply laughed when she read the printed document in her office. We agreed to schedule a formal mediation session to avoid a lengthy civil trial. Gemma walked into the downtown mediation center wearing a conservative gray suit, clutching a crumpled tissue. She thoroughly believed her tears would somehow overrule the cold, hard evidence sitting in my briefcase. The mediator, a retired judge with sharp gray eyes, reviewed the printed email I provided. He read the exact words my sister had typed. "Yes, I am legally divorced. That is the real document. Release the payment." The older man did not care about family dynamics. He pointed out that her own written words tied the funds directly to a legal condition she had willfully fabricated. He warned her cheap attorney that a public courtroom would not look kindly upon extortion using altered court documents. Within 2 hours, the paper trail forced a total surrender. Gemma officially withdrew her demand letter, acknowledging on the record that she had zero legal claim to my money. Furthermore, Beatrix forced her to sign a strict payment plan to reimburse a portion of the original legal fees she had obtained under false pretenses 3 years ago. Mom called me on a rainy Tuesday evening in early December. The woman who raised me sounded incredibly old, her usual commanding tone shattered into pieces. "Gemma has nowhere else to go," Mom pleaded over the phone, her voice shaking. "The collection agencies are calling my house constantly. My retirement savings are draining. Please, Sloane. Just let her use your spare bedroom for a few months. Bring me a copy of your condo key." Standing by my kitchen window, I watched the city lights blur in the falling rain. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to negotiate or explain myself anymore. "She can stay in her old childhood room at your house," I replied smoothly. "You always said that room belonged to her." Silence stretched across the cellular connection. Mom was finally trapped inside the very system she had built and protected. The woman who had enabled years of financial abuse would now spend her retirement living with the golden child and a mountain of unpaid bills. There was no designated scapegoat left to absorb the stress. "We will only communicate via email for the next 6 months. I laid down my final conditions. Do not ask me for money, and do not show up at my building unannounced. The security desk will turn you away." I disconnected the call without waiting for an agreement. The Director of Compliance promotion came with a substantial quarterly bonus. Instead of paying someone else's emergency bills, I transferred a large portion directly to my mortgage principal. With the remaining money, I visited a local furniture boutique and purchased a beautiful dining table crafted from solid oak. For wooden chairs surrounded the new table by the time spring arrived in the city. Soft evening light spilled through the large windows of my condo, illuminating a small, quiet dinner party. Beatrix sat across from me, laughing at a joke made by a coworker. The smell of roasted garlic and fresh basil filled the warm air. My cell phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. Mom's name flashed on the bright screen. I walked over, picked up the device, and placed it face down on the cool marble. I felt no fear, no lingering guilt, and no urgent need to answer. Looking back at the solid oak dining table, a profound sense of peace settled into my chest. Nobody had to pay a retainer fee to earn a seat in this room. Nobody got erased from a chart just to make another person feel larger. Every person sitting in those chairs was chosen through genuine respect and mutual care. My family had deleted my seat because they believed I would always pay whatever ransom they demanded to get it back. They were entirely wrong. I had already built a home of my own. Sometimes the hardest lesson you will ever learn is that you cannot buy genuine love, no matter how many times you open your wallet. When you are designated as the strong one in your family, it is incredibly easy to confuse being needed with being valued. But true family does not demand that you finance their deception or absorb the crushing weight of their mistakes just to keep the peace. Setting a firm financial boundary is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of profound self-preservation. You are allowed to stop paying the ransom for your own seat at their table. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic family member to protect your own sanity and your bank account? Am I wrong for letting my sister face the legal and financial consequences of her own forgery? Let me know your thoughts and share your own stories in the comments below, because nobody should have to carry that heavy burden alone. And if this story gave you the satisfaction you were looking for, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more crazy Reddit drama. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.